Hey everyone, today I'm doing the Faces of Horror book tag. This was created by Juan over at Plagued by Visions, and as you guys probably know, I don't do too many book tags. It's just not really my thing personally. It's been a long time since I've done any, and this might be the last one I ever do, I don't know, but I watched Juan's video of this, of course, and then Michael K. Vaughn's, and I just thought it was a really cool tag. I like the questions, and yeah, I just thought I'd do this one. Why not? And I also did not plan for this to be a Goosebumps edition, but it turns out that there are Goosebumps books that are appropriate answers for these prompts. So yeah, basically I'm going to have a Goosebumps book for each of these answers, and then also some non-Goosebumps books as well. So I'm kind of doing multiple answers for these. And then there were also two of the questions in this book tag that, as hard as I tried to come up with a book, I could not think of anything. And those two questions are, what horror book has depressed you or made you cry? I could not think of any. There have been a few books that have made me tear up a little bit, but those are nonfiction books and not horror at all. So I just decided not to answer that one. And then the other question was, what's a non-horror book that you consider horror? And again, I was thinking very long and hard about that and kind of combing through my bookshelves, and I really could not come up with any good answer for that one. So yeah, I'm kind of altering this book tag a little bit. So yeah, I'm kind of doing my own version of it a little bit, I guess, but let's just jump into it. So question number one, what is a horror book that disturbed or scared you? And my first answer for it is Werewolf Skin. This is book number 60 in the original Goosebumps series. And there were quite a few Goosebumps books that really creeped me out when I was a kid. And this is one that I remember most for really just freaking me out. I clearly remember reading this book. It was in the middle of the day, summertime. I don't remember exactly how old I was. I want to say 10 or 11 years old, maybe, roughly. And I was just in my bedroom, just reading this in the middle of the day. It was bright out, warm. The sun is shining through my window. Just a very, there's no reason it should have scared me as much as it did. But there's a scene in this book towards the end where the werewolves are chasing our main character. I believe his name is Alex, if I remember correctly. The werewolves are chasing him, and it's the final climax of the book. And it freaked me the heck out. And like I said, there were a few Goosebumps books that really did that when I was younger, but most of the time I just read them because I enjoyed them. The majority didn't necessarily scare me all that much. But this one is up there with there's a bunch of dust on the top of it here. It's been sitting on my shelf for so long. But yeah, this one might have freaked me out more than any other. It's right up there in maybe the top 5 Goosebumps books that scared me the most when I was a kid. I don't know, maybe I should do a video of that, the scariest Goosebumps books are the ones that scared me the most as a kid. I don't know. Let me know down in the comments if you'd like to see a video like that. But yeah, that one scene at the end where the werewolves are chasing the main character, for whatever reason, it really freaked me out. So yeah, Werewolf Skin is my first answer for that question. And then the other book that scared or disturbed me is one that I've already talked about on this channel. I did a review for it, and I talked about it in my video where I did my favorite books in 2021, and that is The Troop by Nick Cutter. Now, this isn't a book that necessarily scared me all that much or even disturbed me, but it did make me really uncomfortable at times. It really got under my skin, pun intended. The whole thing with the parasitic infection, it just really made me squirm a little bit and just kind of made me uneasy. Just very disgusting, very creepy. And I'm someone who's a little bit, not an extreme germaphobe or anything, but a little bit of a germaphobe, and that kind of thing just freaks me out, like parasites and that whole idea. So yeah, this book got under my skin a little bit. It definitely creeped me out, and it was kind of eerie and very gross and disgusting, and it was fantastic. I loved it. And again, this wasn't a perfect book or anything. It wasn't a 5-star read. But I did really enjoy it, and it's in recent times, over the last couple of years, this is probably the horror book that got to me the most. So yeah, The Troop by Nick Cutter is my other answer for that prompt. All right, on to prompt number 2. I have my little notes here. What is a horror story that made me laugh? And the first answer for that is a Goosebumps book from Series 2000, Be Afraid, Be Very Afraid. Now, this is not one of my favorite Goosebumps books. I don't even think this is one that is very good, to be honest. This is kind of one you just don't really take too seriously. This is one of the Goosebumps book that leans more into the humor side of things. It's not really scary or very horror-centric. And I also want to mention quick that laughing out loud is not something I do very often at all, whether it be watching a movie or reading a book. If it's usually, reading is just solitary anyway most of the time, and it just seems weird to laugh out loud at something. Sometimes I might chuckle a little bit here and there. There's been some Goosebumps books that have made me do that, but this is the only one in history that has actually got me to laugh out loud, like borderline hysterical laughter, okay? And what got me to laughing so much about this book was the twist ending on this one. So leading up to the end of this book, kind of spoiler alert here, we get a bunch of really weird twists where the book starts to take a turn into like the meta territory, and it's almost kind of like making fun of itself, like it's parodying itself. And there's like some dream sequences, and like you don't know what's real and what's not. And then at the very end, and I guess I can't talk about it too much in detail. It's kind of hard to understand unless you know like the full context of the story, I guess was what I'm trying to say. So I wouldn't really be able to explain it properly. You'd have to read the whole book to understand. But there's one final twist at the end that consists in like the very last sentence. And just, it was so ridiculous, so stupid, but it just made me laugh because it completely caught me off guard. And for some reason, it just really struck my funny bone. So yeah, Be Afraid, Be Very Afraid is the only Goosebumps book in history to actually get me to laugh out loud. I was just like, what the heck did I just read? So yeah, there's that one. And then my second answer for that prompt is actually a movie. And I believe Juan stated in his book tag that we could include movies or short stories or whatever we wanted as answers to these prompts. So I decided to include a movie for my second answer for a horror story that made me laugh. And that is the movie Dead Alive. I talked about this a little bit in my top 10 horror movies list. I absolutely love this movie, obviously, if it's in my top 10. And again, I don't laugh out loud too often. Sometimes I might find some amusement and chuckle here and there. But yeah, I don't laugh out loud very often. And this movie made me laugh out loud several times. There's one part in this movie where there's like a little zombie baby running around a park and just doing all sorts of crazy stuff. That whole sequence was absolutely hilarious. I'm pretty sure I was laughing my head off for that entire sequence. The very iconic scene in here where they're in the graveyard and the priest is fighting the zombies and he says, "I kick ass for the Lord." That gets me every time. And then, of course, spoiler alert, the very end of this movie, where Lionel's mother turns into like this huge, giant, zombified creature. And I don't even know what exactly this creature is supposed to be. It's just like this giant mutated creature. And it is just ridiculous looking, but it's hilarious. That just had me laughing my head off for just how over the top it was. And yeah, I laughed out loud several times in this movie. The first time I watched it anyway. I've watched it a couple times since then. And, you know, it kind of loses its effect a little bit over time because you're expecting it. But yeah, this was a movie that made me laugh out loud. So that's my second answer. Dead Alive. This is a great movie. The third prompt, a horror story that made me angry. And I only have one answer for this one, and it is a Goosebumps book from the original series, number 42, Egg Monsters from Mars. Now, some of you probably already know where I'm going with this. I have talked about this before on my channel in, I think, a couple of my Goosebumps related videos. I don't even remember which ones, but some of you probably already know this story. But for those of you who don't, basically, this is one of my favorite Goosebumps books of all time, or was up until the very end. So when I read this book when I was a kid, I absolutely loved it. It's very suspenseful. There's some dark stuff in here. There's basically, kind of spoiler alert, the plot of this book is there's this mad scientist guy, kind of like a mad scientist, who basically kidnaps our main character, a 12-year-old kid, and locks him up in his laboratory room. And yeah, it's a really intense and dark story, and I really liked it. And there's like these little egg monsters, which are presumed to be like some sort of aliens, and they kind of like help the kid escape. And then at the very end of the book, everything seems to be normal and fine. The kid escapes. These egg monsters destroy the mad scientist, and it seems like a normal, like, happy ending. And then all of a sudden, R.L. Stine throws a little twist at us where, spoiler alert again, the main character, and this is like the very last sentence of the book, literally, the main character goes out and he lays an egg. That's what happens, literally. And when I was a kid and I read that, what I did is I ripped out the last, not this copy, a different copy. I literally ripped out the last page of the book because it pissed me off so bad. It made me angry because that last twist made no sense, just completely came out of left field and ruined the experience of this book. Now, R.L. Stine is known for doing things like this somewhat frequently, where he just throws in this random, really weird twist, just comes out of nowhere, and sometimes it ruins the story, or at least in some way kind of ruins your overall enjoyment of it. In this book, I was just like, what is it? It is the most WTF moment in all of Goosebumps history. And yeah, aside from that twist ending, this is a fantastic Goosebumps book. I love Egg Monsters from Mars. But that twist ending really pissed me off. And to this day, I just feel like it's kind of like contaminated this book. So yeah, a book that made me angry, Egg Monsters from Mars. And the last prompt is, what is a horror story that is important to me? My first answer for this one is Monster Blood. This is the third book from the original Goosebumps series. And as many of you probably already know, this is one of my favorite Goosebumps books of all time. One of the very first Goosebumps books I've ever read. And the reason this one is so important to me, again, as some of you already obviously know, I use Monster Blood as kind of my pseudonym and my channel name. And I've also been using it as my pseudonym for a very long time on like various websites. And like, I used to play video games a lot when I was younger, and I would always use it as like my username for like PlayStation and just all sorts, pretty much everything. I would always use my username for Monster Blood was my username for everything. And I guess it's kind of hard to explain why it's so important to me, because I want to remain a little bit ambiguous behind it. There is some more personal meaning behind why Monster Blood has kind of become like my alter ego, I guess, like my pseudonym. There's sort of an inside joke with me and some of my close friends and family that Monster Blood is my real name, and of course Austin is my pen name or whatever. But yeah, Monster Blood is just a really important book to me. And again, this is one of the earliest Goosebumps books that I ever read, and probably one of the first 5 Goosebumps books I ever read, I want to say. And this one, the twist ending on it was the first twist ending, I think, in a book, one of these books, to really like shock me. I remember when I read this book and I came to that final like twist and the climax of the story and everything, I was just like so like just blown away by it, and I had never read anything like it before in my life. And so yeah, this book just really holds a very dear place in my heart, I guess. That sounds corny as hell, but yeah, Monster Blood is a very important book to me. And yeah, I don't know what else to say about it, but that's my first answer. And then my final answer for the final prompt of a book that's important to me is Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. I don't know if I've talked about this book. I think I may have mentioned it before in one of my videos. I have not done an individual review of this book. And this is the 1831 edition. I also have the 1818 version of this book. Also a Penguin classic. And I first read this when I was 17 or 18, roughly. Actually, I probably would have been 18 because I believe I first read it around the time I was going to college. And this book is important to me for a lot of reasons. First of all, This was one of the very first like classics that I've ever read. Like even outside of the horror genre, just in general. And when I first read this book, I was very just captivated by the writing style and like the old English style of language and that whole thing. I was just very just like fascinated by it. And after I read it, like it made me want to discover like what other classic literature and see what else was out there. Like it really opened up my eyes to this entire world of literature that like I was aware of at the time, obviously, but I still hadn't really explored all that much. I didn't know all that much about it. And it led me to want to read other classic stuff like Edgar Allan Poe and H.P. Lovecraft and all this other stuff. So this book really was kind of my gateway into like classic horror, I guess you could say. And I don't think it was my very, very first like classic horror lit, but it was among my first. And again, it really just kind of sparked my interest in seeing what else was out there, and not just horror too, other classic literature. And when I first read this, like not only was I very fascinated by this like old English writing style and the language use and all of that, but just the story in general, I was just so surprised to see how different this was from my understanding of Frankenstein. Because like most people, I was unfamiliar with the true story of Frankenstein. My knowledge was limited to like the old Universal monster movies where Frankenstein is known as the monster and you know, he's the big green, tall creature that walks around slowly like a zombie. And of course, that is not what this book is at all. And of course, this became one of my favorite books of all time. And when I was in college, I actually ended up writing an essay on this book and kind of like comparing it to the movie and like people's understanding of the story and that sort of thing. So this book also was kind of a source of like study when I was in college, and I had to do like all sorts of projects on it. I ended up doing like an actual project on this as well, and not like just an essay. And so yeah, basically this book is just really important to me for a lot of reasons, and it is one of my favorite books of all time. And maybe I'll talk about this book a little bit more in depth at some point on my channel. But yeah, Frankenstein by Mary Shelley is one of the most important books to me. And that's it. That's it, guys. Those are my answers for 4 prompts to my own version, my own altered version of Juan's book tag. Sorry, I butchered it a little bit, but again, 2 of those prompts I just could not come up with really any solid answers for. And it just so happened that a lot of these questions I came up with Goosebumps books to answer them for. So yeah, that's my tag video, guys. As for tagging someone, I don't really know who to tag. If you want to do this book tag, go and do it. I would love to see your answers. I would love to see what you come up with. But I guess I'm not really going to tag anybody. So that's it, guys. Thanks for creating this tag, Juan. It was fun to do. And that's it. Have a great day.